Hello there and welcome back to the show. I'm joined by Rosindell MP, Conservative and Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister. Let's start off, first of all, by talking about what on earth is going on with this data leak and the Afghans. Report in the Telegraph today says 1 in 16 only might be credible as people who deserve to come over here. What's led to this screaming mess?
I'm shocked by it all. I don't understand it. I do understand that those who worked with the British Armed Forces in Afghanistan who were under threat of their lives were under threat with the Taliban, I can understand why we had a duty to them. I don't understand why it had to be secret for so long, and I don't really understand why so many people are on this list and how many of them are actually genuine. There's been a cover-up and both governments have been part of this, and I think that the British people are owed an explanation for what has happened.
I mean, look, we don't know anything about this this leak particularly. We heard that someone accidentally just sent an email, and why are all these people on this list, and why does this now mean every single one of them seems to be able to use Barings law firm to come here with their 12,000 children? But is there a risk potentially, because it was being stuck around on Facebook groups, that this was done maliciously in order to lead to a situation where we're then forced to accept so many people, Lord knows who amongst their number?
Look, I don't know. It could be the truth, it could be something different, it could be just a mistake, we don't know. All I can say is that this is one of the worst mistakes of any government has made, but it's not really politicians. It happened through people that had access to this data and it was leaked. So at the end of the day, governments, of course, they're to blame for things that go wrong, but it's not a party political thing. It's a huge mistake, and the powers that be obviously have to account for what they've done. The trouble is, it's the British people paying the bill, and we're having to take in all these additional people from Afghanistan, and now we find out it's happening behind closed doors and we weren't aware of it. And I think that's what people are angry about, that we didn't know the truth, and only now we're finding out.
It is in the gift of the government, though, isn't it, about actually doing something about what could end up being a massive problem. If there's 100,000 people who come over from Afghanistan to be resettled here, plus, because apparently lawyers are now, of course, seeking to use the ECHR to force us into accepting even more people, because they'll want to bring every single person within their village, within their tribe. Again, we don't know who they are. I don't imagine 100,000 people can be sensibly vetted, particularly coming from a country like Afghanistan. That it actually the government could turn around and say, we're going to declare some sort of state of emergency. We're not going to use the ECHR. We're going to ignore it. But they're not going to. How at risk do you think we are? I mean, seriously, how scary is this?
Well,
should we just calm down? Or?
Well, no, I think it is scary, generally speaking, not just people from Afghanistan, but the fact that we have so many people coming into our country, and many of them are not here for the right reasons, and they are using the generosity of this country to stay here, to bring their families. We simply can't afford it, but also we're bringing in people that are risky, people that could do our country harm. So we need a radical change to our asylum policy and our immigration policy, and we need a government prepared to do the thing that is necessary to protect our country. The Conservatives failed to do this in government, and that's why we're out of government, but Labour are far worse. So the Conservative Party, my party, has to really take this seriously and take a radical plan forward if we are to ever win back the confidence of the British people. But as you've rightly said, Alex, the lawyers are already chasing this. I mean, potentially this is going to cost us huge sums of money, because the lawyers will now take it to the very end and try to squeeze as much money out of the system as they can. And that's ECHR is another thing. We simply have to get out of the ECHR. There's no doubt about that. And I think the Conservative Party needs to make that decision very quickly.
I'm worried about how much it's going to cost the taxpayer. Everybody's worried about the cost to the taxpayer when we're in such a big financial crisis. But what worries me more on a personal level, take whatever money you want out of my salary. I just don't want to be harassed in the street. I don't want 14-year-old girls to be raped. I don't want men standing outside school gates going after school children because that's fair game in their own country, and they think it's fair game over here because girls over here get to go to school, don't have to wear the burqa, can have a little drink on a park bench together. And they think, therefore, that those girls are scum of the earth and they can do what they like with them. And what worries me is stories like this, where it says that hundreds of asylum seekers living in these hotels have been charged with crimes such as rape, robbery and GBH. In fact, court records show, and courts, of course, are recording only where there are charges. Normally that's the tip of an iceberg, because there'll be things that never get charged. I know of a particular story where a policeman told me he had to go intervene in a big beat-up, a big brawl inside a migrant hotel, and it was decided, well, probably best not to charge anyone, because then there'll be reprisals. Then you wonder how many women don't go forward to the police. When it's things such as street harassment, you probably don't phone the police, but it makes your life a screaming misery. And what we know from court records alone is 1 in 100 migrants, 1 in 100, are committing crimes. They have been charged. This is a danger now, and what I want to know is what we do. Yes, we've got a load more coming. Brilliant. We've got at least 100 coming over every single day. What do we do about the people who are already here?
Well, all of it's a disgrace, and the political establishment in this country has completely failed to deal with it, completely. And people are angry. People have had enough. My constituents have absolutely had enough, and we're seeing it affecting our towns and cities across the country. So we need a radical change to our approach to this. We can't do anything until we've
What does that look like? I mean, radical change is good, but I want to hear what that is.
So, first of all, we take back control of our human rights laws. We cannot be subjected to ECHR rulings for one moment longer. We need to leave the ECHR so at least we can decide ourselves what our own policy is. Then we ensure that those who are here illegally at the moment are deported. We need to mass deport anyone that is here
And what if
illegally.
they've thrown away their passports and you don't know where they've come from? Or what if there's no returns agreement because the people in the country you want to send them back to is the Taliban?
You're quite right, and that's why it can be complicated, but we have to set the principles. If we set the principles and we set out to achieve them, even though there are obstacles on the way, then at least we've got a clear path. And thirdly, we change our entire immigration system so that people that come into this country are only people we absolutely need, or there's particular family circumstances.
Would you go as far as doing something similar to what Trump's doing in America, which is sort of coming out of a naughty list of countries? We won't accept people from these countries because of your human rights record, because of your attitudes
potentially. But we should also be prepared to strip people of their nationality. So if someone has come to this country, we've trusted them, we've given them British citizenship, they supposedly swore oath of allegiance to the King, and then we find that they're doing bad things or they're disrespecting our culture, our laws and our British way of life, then we should strip them of their British citizenship and send them to where they originally came from.
I want to ask you, because you just told me during the advert break when you came into the studio that you've got a really cool idea for taking back control of Essex, and I thought, hey, Andrew, that sounds like a really good plan. The borough of Havering, tell me more.
So Havering is Essex. We've never been London, but in the 60s we were lumped into Greater London, and ever since then we've paid a lot of money into Greater London, particularly now that Mayor Khan is running the Greater London Authority. It's costing us a fortune, but we've never really been London. We orbit London, we're close to London, but we're not in London, and we don't like having to fund all what's going on in inner London. So we want to reclaim our Essex identity, and I'm campaigning for Havering to be an independent borough. We don't need the mayor. We don't need the GLA. We can work with our neighbouring boroughs. We can work with London or Essex. But we don't need this overarching mayor and this overarching GLA that costs us hundreds of millions of pounds for which we get very little in return. Do you know, in my borough, we barely see a policeman. We barely see one. We should get 1,000 police based on what we pay. We barely see any police. Transport for London, well, they threaten us constantly that if we leave the GLA, our pensioners will lose their Freedom Pass. That's not true, because we pay for that additionally for the Freedom Pass, and I'm putting a bill to Parliament on Monday to make it law that they can't take away our Freedom Pass for the pensioners. In fact, it needs to be extended to the entire TfL network. So if you live in Brentwood, or if you live in Watford, or if you live in Cheshunt, which is served by TfL services, then you should be entitled to the same travel concessions.
I love this idea of devolving away from Khanistan. Take back control of your outer London borough. You don't need to be under Sadiq's shadow. I think it's a great plan, and all strength to your elbow. Andrew Rosindell MP, Conservative and Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister. Thank you for coming into the studio. Thank you for listening.